Hey, welcome to Badaboom. We are going to be talking today, spoiler warning, about The Boys season four. So if you haven't seen the first episode, they dropped all three episodes today, but we're going to dive right in. Chris, what did you think so far of season four? I know you're a big fan of the show and you've been waiting for this to come out for a while. It's been highly anticipated by you.
Yeah, funny enough, I think it kind of snuck up on me. I was like, "Oh, that's like pretty far away," and I didn't watch Gen V, which I've heard is really good. Um, I didn't even watch the animated series. I watched some of the clips, but I didn't watch all of them because I just like enjoying this, and I feel like there's
Yeah.
just too many expanded universes to just jump into. And that's kind of like, before I get into sort of like the boys, I think the boys has become what it's made fun of, which is something that's gone on like too long and being bloated and these cinematic universes and stuff. But I thought it was solid. I got to only watch the first episode. It wasn't as explosive as I thought it would be, considering sort of like the way the last season ended. And I think based on some of the new characters introduced, it seems like it's going to be more of a slow burn, which shows you that they're probably running out of steam in terms of story, which is why Eric Kripke, the creator, announced that season five will be the final season of The Boys. And, as much as I love the show, I was like, thank God, because there's only so much you could
Yeah.
squeeze out of this, Butcher and Homelander fight before they come to an end. And they've come face to face before, but, at this point, one of them has to go, or both of them. I think that's kind of like what it's leading to. So it definitely feels like this season's more sort of based on the characters that was introduced, like Sage, who's the smartest person on the planet, that they're going to be sort of going. And also, you have Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character introduced, who's, the CIA operative on the boy side. So I think there's going to be sort of like a lot of like back and forth in the shadows. There were some cool moments, some really awesome gags, like Newman's daughter having sort of like,
Oh, that was crazy.
she's a soup, but she has like these tentacles that come out of her mouth and they're like really vicious. But, I think a lot of the characters, some they just kind of feel like they're getting in a place where they're running in circles, And is having problems at home. Frenchie is sort of having problems with his path, but also loving Kimiko. Kimiko's having problems with like, hey, does Frenchie love me? So it seems like there's kind of like Huey's kind of, in that spot of like, being torn between the real world and also this world of like sabotage and soups. Starlight obviously hates Homelander and is sort of like, battling with that. So it just seems like they're kind of like in the same spots or in places where you felt like, all right, like I felt like this part of the character was resolved. But I just love the show. So to see the characters together was exciting. But I do get the sense that like, okay, like this needs to sort of we need to start picking this up to get to the end.
Yeah, and I mean, I watched a little bit more episodes than you did, and it does feel like this season is going to be a building season. Like
Which is probably
Sage
why
is,
they did 3 episodes to launch. They
yeah,
probably were like, "Hey," and, I always feel like before I used to like, "Oh my god, they're doing this for the fans." It's like, no, they probably know that if they just drop 1 episode, people will be like, "What is going on? Where is this going?" So I think now it's kind of like, "Hey, like, we know this is a slow burn, so here's 3 episodes so that we can move this along."
yeah, and that's why I think. Like, I'm enjoying the slow burn, not watching all three of the episodes, and there are some things that happen specifically in the third episode that I'm like, oh, that's definitely going to keep me interested. And I know you haven't seen it yet, so I'm not going to provide those spoilers. So, uh, there's a lot of things that I think are going to make a even if it's not like that much of a climactic ending of this season, it's still like, okay, wow, like the fifth season better have a really great payout if the fourth one doesn't, because they've introduced, Sage, who like is crazy smart, and you never really feel like you know whose side she's on. And I feel there's certain characters that like Butcher, like you don't know when is he gonna die, and like he may not really be afraid of dying because he's like, hey, I'll be really, really reckless because I know I'm dying anyway. Not really got much to protect on his part. So there's lots of things where like it could feel like it could go any way, but it's it's tough because it doesn't feel like as centralized where like there's a main goal for the season. Like at the beginning of some of the other seasons, you'd be like, hey, yeah, we know we're getting Soldier Boy, or we know we're going after the soups or Huey's all in. And this season it's like, well, what's the goal? Like we don't even from the first three episodes, there's no real sense of to me what's the end game for this season. What are we really building up to? And so with the next episode coming out like next week, I'm not like super excited to be like, man, I can't wait to see this, but more so I have no idea what's really going to happen next week. So I'm interested to watch it, but I don't have a way of really giving solid predictions of what I think could happen. So the excitement, like, it's not exactly there as it has been in previous seasons. So, that makes total sense why they say, hey, we got to give 3 episodes, get you invested. So you'll definitely watch next week because just one episode would have been, I think, a tough to say, hey, I can't wait to watch next week.
Which kind of goes to show sort of like, again, why I haven't watched those like other aspects of the boys universe. Just because I think this is the problem with a lot of these superhero shows, properties, is like there's so much that they're building that has nothing to do with the story like actually going on right then and there, that they kind of have to go in circles because nothing truly important can happen with because it's going to affect, let's say, Gen V season 2 or these kind of things.
Yeah.
And I think it's less so than others, but I do, as you're kind of talking about, like what's the point? It's like, well, for the last 2 seasons, and even from the beginning, the point is like kill Homelander.
Yeah.
And Homelander's story is actually probably the most interesting. He's gotten to the top, but he realizes like, hey, like I'm still unhappy. I have like all these people that finally listen to me. I don't have a boss anymore, but I'm still unhappy. And that's why he goes to Sage to can be like, hey, you're smart. What will make me happy or what will get me closer to happiness? Is it this world where we're all like superheroes and people don't bow to me? But it's like, would I like that? Because then people don't bow to me. So his story is actually pretty interesting. But like in terms of the goal of the show, it's like, hey, like they've gotten pretty close before to killing him. And it's like, now they kind of have to, depending how things go, like invent a new way to kill him. I don't know if Soldier Boy is going to come back to be able to do that. Obviously, you know, um, Butcher is on limited time, but I'm sure we're going to get to the end of the season and he's going to be like, I found a cure. Or, or Homelander's like, we got to be alive together. So let me laser out that tumor from your head or something like that. Let's check back this episode if that prediction's right. um, because, obviously that's kind of like the highlight of this season. But yeah, like it's hard to kind of like do a breakdown from what I saw and based on sort of like your reactions to episode 2 and 3. There's not much to go on outside of like, hey, it's the boys. It's violent, it's funny, it's cool. But now it's sort of like, hey, like, yeah, season 5 looks like probably where the juice is going to be because this season feels like it's all right, let's put it in cruise control because we know the ending is coming, but that can change with the later episodes obviously. But for me, like watching that first episode, I was like, hey, like why do I feel like a lot of the character issues that are going on right now were resolved last season or the season before? So like, and I think,
Yeah.
the writers, Eric Kripke, obviously he comes from a network background, so he knows how to sort of like make these things go on longer and sort of make sure that every character has like, some type of drama going on or some type of arc. But the reality is, it's like, hey, like, at this point, I just want to see, Butcher and Homelander on a collision course. But, again, maybe that's next season.
Yeah, and I really want to see more of Jeffrey Morgan in the show across the 3 episodes. Like he's he's only in it for bits and pieces, which like he's a supporting character, but he seems to have a really close connection to Butcher. And anytime someone's close to Butcher, it's not for a good reason. And those reasons either are explored or cause drama or brought up in some way. And so hopefully in the upcoming episodes, like we understand why they're close and maybe there's more dirt between them. But it just seems like he's such a good actor and like I love everything he's in. So it's like, please don't just have him pop in every now and then to be like, "Hey, do you want to do my thing? You want to do my thing?" and have Butcher carry it out. Like, there's some real potential there, but I just feel like in the first 3 episodes, it wasn't completely tapped into. So, if anything, so far, without providing a ton of other spoilers for you, that would be what I would like to have in the upcoming episodes.
Well, just based on sort of your reaction, like I said, I don't think there's much to exciting to explore. But it's funny, you bring up sort of Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character, and it's kind of like how he was on Supernatural, which is Eric Kripke's, most famous
Yeah.
show. Is like, hey, like he's really cool. And then he's only in the show like 2, 3 episodes throughout the 14
Yeah.
seasons. But, obviously, really important character, the father of, Dean and Sam. But yeah, I'm in a place where I watched it and I was like, okay, like I'm in it. It's not like super disappointing or anything like that. But it does show that, hey, like the show is kind of running out of gas because the reality, the core concept is either, taking down, if you go from the beginning, like taking down the Seven or Supes in general, to, Butcher and Homelander in this very personal battle. So I think that is what needs to happen, because every character, I feel like their arc is at the point of like, okay, everyone else is going in circles, and including Homelander and Butcher is like, okay, like you guys got to kill each other at this point.
Yeah. Someone's got to give, and that's what I think they're really building up to. But it's like, well, if we're gonna have one more season, how much of stuff are we gonna have to burn through between now and then to get that? And what are they gonna do to keep it interesting?
Yeah, and who knows? Like at this point, in terms of where Homelander is, you wonder what is going to change in terms of like, all right, like what's the next step? Because at this point, he's pretty close to as close as you can get to really being like the president without being the president. Obviously they have that Newman story going on in the background, but like Homelander's become this, this figure, and obviously you have Starlight's fans on the other side, and he's using Sage to kind of like, you know, like game out this whole like revolution and stuff like that, push things in the right direction. So I'm wondering sort of like, hey, like where does he go in season 5 to get him to the point where, he's back to hating Butcher? Because I think at this point, you're like, well, Butcher's going to die in 6 months. I have his kid. I'm here. The only thing I'm concerned about is my happiness.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. And what did you guys think? Did you like the first 3 episodes of The Boys? Do you think it's going to be a slow burn, or we're going to have some really climactic things happening towards the end of the season? Let us know in the comments. And with that, bada boom.
Bada boom. Thank you for listening to the Badaboom podcast. Keep the conversation going on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Get in the comments on our YouTube channel and let us know what you'd like to hear next. And please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen.